Hey there, kids. Hope you're doing well. Just starting where we left off in class, taking a look at some slides of early Renaissance artwork. So I'm just going to pick up where we left off and add to your term sheet, add to your themes as we go, if it fits. Um, we left off talking about Masaccio's tribute money, and we were talking a lot about composition in terms of the the style and the structure used to create a realistic depiction of this story. We talked about chiaroscuro, we talked about linear perspective and orthogonals leading to a vanishing point at Christ's head. You talked about aerial perspective with the background yesterday. So, all good things. Actually, that was today that we were talking. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention with this painting is its narrative, its story, what it's actually depicting. And we kind of talked about that in class today, that the one thing that makes this reminiscent of a medieval painting is that it has three parts of the story all in one frame. And so in the center, we can see Jesus talking to Peter and the disciples. Um, Peter's asking if we should how we're going to be paying taxes, and Jesus tells Peter go over to the water here and look for a fish, and there will be coins in the fish's mouth. So pick those out and we'll pay the tax collector with those coins. So here again, you see Jesus directing Peter to go. Here's Peter looking for that fish and the coins. And here's Peter again giving the tax collector that money. So the idea that all three are happening in the same frame, less realistic, but obviously the focus is to tell the story. So that is Masaccio's tribute money. Next up, we have another painting by Masaccio. This one's called Trinity, and so you can see the Trinity is the focal point here in this painting. We have Jesus, the Holy Spirit, symbolized by the dove, and God the Father up top, showing the Trinity. You can see down below we have a skeleton, and the writing up above actually is a reminder of memento mori, a warning of death that says, I was once what you are, and what I am you will become. And that is a pretty medieval comment as well. The idea, a reminder of death, like Adam, man, and what happens to man because of original sin, with the depiction up above of God, and what happens because of God's grace, uh, people's being saved. And so that's the narrative. But there are some compositional things that you can see here that suggest we're dealing with Renaissance level paintings, early Renaissance level paintings now. So if we were in class, I'd ask you, what are you noticing? What looks realistic? What's striving to show realism? Well, you might mention some chiaroscuro, especially on the up close look here, where you can see the eyes look really fantastic. The clothes look okay. The drapery, especially if you look farther at a distance, you can see drapery looks pretty good. So all things done to use chiaroscuro and make the figures look more realistic, three-dimensional. Also, we see the architecture looks really excellent. It looks like it's a barrel vault. Like it looks like this arch goes back because of aerial perspective and because of linear perspective. And again, all these lines drawing down to a focal point, a vanishing point of Jesus. So all good choices that make this appear to be realistic. But this is early. Okay, let's keep going. Next up, this one I'm thinking you might say, is it the same? Or is this more reminiscent of medieval art? Is this a step forward into Renaissance? Or does it have traces of the old style? Well, If you ask me, I would say that this is looking a little bit older, not like a Renaissance painting. It reminds me a bit of what you saw with Martini earlier in this class, the harkening back to Unit 4. Here you can see Mary receiving the news that she's with child, or she will be with child. And here you can see a ray of sun implying her being with child, being announced, though that news, the Annunciation from the angel Gabriel. What exactly looks old, though? What looks medieval here? What is not Renaissance? Well, I would go right away to the faces, the unnatural poses, the surreal background that doesn't look quite so realistic, although it does look very regal. But like I said, it even reminds me of, here I posted Duccio's Annunciation. Very, very similar. Not the kind of chiaroscuro in depth that you see with Masaccio here. Um, Also, you can see this is sort of like Masaccio, the older style, where we have the first story on the panel of Mary and the angel Gabriel, but then we have Adam and Eve, again with that same sort of depiction of the contrast between original sin and the grace provided through Jesus's birth and death. And so that is kind of a thing that we've seen before. That is an older style approach. I guess it's getting kind of sunny over here. Okay. That is Fra Angelico's Annunciation. Next up, you guys were talking about this one in class today. This is Ghiberti's Sacrifice of Isaac, the panel that went on the door to the Florentine cathedral. And so this is just one panel expanded, and here you can see there are lots of little panels here. So you remember reading the story. Ghiberti won the competition. Who would get the commission of the door to do all of the panels? Ghiberti won. Brunelleschi lost. We'll see him coming up in a little bit. But let's take a look now at what you're actually seeing. Oh man, it's getting really sunny. Let's go over here. Okay. Here you're seeing the story of Abraham, Old Testament story, preparing to sacrifice his son Isaac, because that was the command God gave him. And again, like the previous paintings, you can see over here to the left, Isaac and Abraham climbing up the mountain. In the center, the height of action, Abraham preparing to sacrifice his son. And then up above, an angel screaming in, telling Abraham to stop and take Isaac off of the sacrificial altar place and instead sacrifice a ram. And so a few things in terms of composition. Though this is sculpture, you can see there are efforts to make this look realistic, a major defining characteristic of Renaissance art. What do we have? Well, even though it's the three incidents happening, like we saw before, you have this nice divider that separates the parts of the story, kind of like looking like a mountain. Drapery of the clothing looks fantastic. The blowing of the scarf, really good, definitely making it look like there's wind up on this mountain, all realistic. Even Isaac's pose, this contrapposto pose, definitely evokes a feeling of he's not really excited to be there, and even looks kind of like a prisoner, which he is. And the motion, the emotion and the motion of the angel coming in also suggests this is a real thing that's happening. That is Ghiberti's Sacrifice of Isaac. Next, love this one. This is my favorite part of what we're looking at right now. This is the Duomo, the Dorm of the Cathedral of Florence. So Ghiberti, big shot, gets to make the door, but Brunelleschi doesn't roll over. In fact, he goes back to the workshop and turns his loss, his failure, what many people would would give up after that, he turns that into success. And so to me, that's very inspirational. The idea that he failed, but he doesn't get knocked down. So, so Brunelleschi turns to architecture and ends up being able to design the dome of the cathedral that he lost the door commission for. This is a big deal because it's different and new. He had quite a problem. The problem was, how do you span 140 feet without flying buttresses, which, if you remember from those Gothic cathedrals like Chartres Cathedral, um, all those flying buttresses that swooped up and act as support, they're not here. How do you span that much space without external supports? Well, his solution was to create the largest dome since the Pantheon, since Greece, since classical Greece. What he did is he raised the center of the dome and designed this ogival pointed arch system with a double shell. So there's two shells here that have these leaves inside. 8 are visible, which you can see there are these white things, but there are more that are hidden by the inner dome. Uh, and this pointed arch kind of helps with it too. It's not a true dome. But all of these things work, even cross-hatched bricks and the heavy lantern up top. All of these work to solve the problem that Brunelleschi was faced with. And so I think that's pretty cool, that he rose to the challenge. The other thing that's a little bit different is that you're used to Gothic architecture of the Middle Ages that soared up into the sky. And while the dome certainly does that, it's not the intricacy that we were seeing with Gothic architecture. You know, all those pointy pinnacles that would reach up to the sky, not really happening here. And really, this is a mirror of what was happening in ancient Greece and Rome, going back to the idea of the dome and focusing on functional but beautiful architecture, uh, rational approaches. Are all of those pinnacles super rational from the Gothic age? Probably not. Oh, I forgot. Boy, here's Chartres Cathedral right down below. There's the flying buttresses that are covered up by this dang thing. Let's get it out of here. There, you can see the flying buttresses leaning up. I'm afraid to do it, but I'll do. Yeah, dang it. Right here. None of that with this Renaissance style architecture. So pretty cool. And this is where we leave off. Now start the Medici video. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you later.